Nearly 14 years ago today, I had my first school day. There I am, a little girl with a big backpack standing in front of what seemed like an enormous concrete building, one that would shape me into the person I would become. This building is where children's minds are shaped and molded into society's standards. I walked into that building eager and excited to learn. However, a few years later, I had become the reason I'm doing this talk right now. I had become so unhappy in my education. In my first few years at school, my view towards the world had completely shifted. I went from a little girl who was happy and excited to learn to someone who had gotten lost in the system, constantly looking for a way out. My way of expressing that I felt lost was by testing the boundaries. I would bother teachers and stretch the system to its limits, just to pass some time. I didn't want to learn. I didn't make any friends. I didn't feel normal. I felt different. And feeling different in a world that is based around fitting in is difficult, especially for a 10-year-old. And when this 10-year-old girl had finally started making some friends, she was told she had to leave. Moving to Greenstone in 6th grade is one of the hardest things I've had to do. I remember laying in bed every night for months before we left. And every night, my dad would have to give me 2 reasons why I should go to Bali. But once the time finally came, and once my parents had dragged me onto that plane, a new chapter had begun. When I first arrived, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know anyone, I didn't speak the language, and there is no way I trusted the education system. I remember my first day at Greenstone perfectly. We sat in a circle, and Pak Noan asked everyone to say our name together with a word starting with the same letter. But when he got to me, I didn't know what to say. I felt out of control and embarrassed. I got stressed and I felt the pressure rising. But nobody laughed at me. Nobody got angry or looked at me with disappointment. Instead, everyone, including the teacher, helped me look for a word that I liked. I remember the feeling of acceptance, feeling part of a whole while still being myself. From that moment on, I understood that education is something I have control over. I had the chance to start over, to learn in a new way. All throughout middle school, I learned I have control over my education. I got to pick my own classes and choose my own projects. For the first time ever, I was happy in my education. But near the end of 9th grade, we had some news. We were moving back to Holland, and I would have to adapt all over again. This time, to a traditional Dutch high school. I had time to mentally prepare myself. And I strongly believe that with all the Greenstone knowledge I had gained over the past 4 years, I should be able to survive in a place that had once made me so unhappy. But as you're probably all thinking, it didn't go as smooth as I'd hoped. Instead, I found myself in a deep downward spiral, reaching my limits within the first 6 months. I was so frustrated and confused. Why did nobody care about what was going on in the world around them? Why was the way I dressed so much more important than what I had to offer? Why didn't some of the teachers know my name? And why didn't I know theirs? I didn't feel connected to the people around me. Instead, I felt alone again. Near the end of the first year, I decided I was going back to Greenstone. No matter what, I was going to make it happen. I set a goal for myself, something I could look forward to. And with the help of Ibu Leslie and a lot of hard work, I find myself at Greenstone this year. in the happiest state I've ever been. But why? Why am I so happy here? What is it? Is it the bamboo, the temperature, the people, or is it just simply personal preference? I came here on a mission to find out. I want to know how I found my happiness in education systems. I'm sharing my story through a professionally shot documentary. I knew from the beginning I wanted to create something immortal, so a documentary seemed like a great place to start. I had the privilege of working together with professional filmmaker Sascha van Doorn, who helped and supported me through every bump and milestone. I'm so grateful for her. She let me get my message on film while teaching me about the process and the equipment along the way. And with a lot of constructive criticism and trust, we have created something I'm super proud of. However, a documentary doesn't make itself. The process has taken me a full year, working on it every day in one way or another. Whether I'm organizing meetings, setting up film shoots, signing papers, or writing voiceovers, we obviously had to face some setbacks in the filming process. Like, I wasn't allowed to film some of my teachers at my school in Holland, and the school itself didn't want to cooperate with filming either. Not even like anonymous shots of hallways and classrooms. But after a lot of back and forth emails, I finally have something to show. Here's a teaser to give you some idea of what I've been working on.
Diep in je hart was je gewoon heel ongelukkig. Je was heel ongelukkig. Je was boos, je vertrouwde het niet.
Jij wilde echt vrij wilde jij. Dat was eigenlijk alleen maar het enige wat je wilde.
If I had a button where I could implode or explode the world of education, the entire industry, as long as no one got hurt, I would without hesitation hit that button right now and get rid of the entire education system.
I think more recently, not just me, but also society has begun to question why do we go to school?
Ik ga naar school omdat het moet.
Nou, ik ga naar school omdat, ja, het moet eigenlijk.
Op het moment beleef ik nogal veel stress.
Slapeloosheid, heel veel stress, het idee dat ik onderdeed voor wat ik eigenlijk kan.
Want het is echt heftig hier in Nederland.
I go to school because I actually really enjoy it, socializing with my friends, but I think it's also a nice way to educate yourself and make yourself a more well-rounded person, knowing more about the world.
Dit is gewoon jouw verhaal. En wat je eigenlijk ermee wil, is gewoon te zorgen dat er meer kinderen in Nederland eigenlijk gelukkig worden. Hè? Dat we kijken van hoe kunnen we nou een beetje van dit hele verhaal naar Nederland in het schoolsysteem brengen. Zodat meer kinderen gelukkig zijn op school.
Through this documentary, I hope to inspire people to make that necessary change in education systems take place. You can follow me on Instagram at Educating Happiness to help spread the word. By now, I can imagine most of you starting to think, so, how do we make education a happier place? Through the process, I have come up with a 5-step plan to improve general happiness in education systems. But I want to start by saying, everyone's journey to happiness is different. There is not one solution. The key is finding the right combination for every individual. The first step is allowing students to develop a positive relationship with nature. Being outside and exploring in an active environment allows students to build confidence and gain a deeper understanding of themselves and of their surroundings. What people often forget is that we are nature. We are an expression of nature. Through modern developments and generations of teaching kids in closed concrete buildings, we have gotten separated from our roots. which often results in people feeling isolated or lost. By getting back in touch with nature through gardening or sustainability projects, or simply just being outside, you give students the opportunity to get back in touch with themselves. Secondly, experiential learning. This is when students gain skills and knowledge by stepping outside of the traditional education system and learning by doing. Experiential learning allows students to step outside of their comfort zones and learn new skills by being put in new and challenging situations, often requiring them to think critically and making real-life decisions, also preparing them for the future. Thirdly, having ownership and freedom over your own learning. Allowing students to pick their own classes and choose their own projects allows them to develop as an individual. When students have a voice in what they get to learn, they are more likely to be happy and motivated in those subjects. When you give students ownership over their own learning, you give them ownership over their own future. Then respect. Respect is crucial in a happy and a successful education. If you, as a student, don't feel respected by your teachers, it is very unlikely you are going to respect them, making it very difficult to learn from each other. Respect is also one of the main differences I came across between Bali and Holland. In Bali, I felt respected and valued in and out of school. In Holland, this hasn't always been the case. Especially in education, I have never felt the same level of respect that I did in Bali. This represents itself in the way students and teachers interact. Which brings me to my fifth and final point. Student-teacher relationships. This is something I want to stress the most. The importance of a respectful relationship between a student and a teacher can mean the difference between a happy and an unhappy education. By a respectful relationship, I mean that students and teachers are seen as equals, as people who learn from each other. Teachers need to get to know their students, know their talents, their passions. Like I said before, the system needs to bend to the needs of every individual. This includes the teachers. If they are given more freedom in what they get to teach, they get the opportunity to build more deeper and meaningful relationships with their students, resulting in a more positive experience for both of them. How do you expect students to be learning if they aren't having fun in their education? We have been teaching entire generations to obey and think in systems instead of thinking outside the box and embracing their own creativity and talents. How do you expect my generation to fix all your problems if you are teaching me the same thing you were taught? We aren't teaching kids about current and future issues like food shortages, pollution of all kinds, racism, assaults, depression, mental health, the list goes on. My generation has the opportunity to change everything. But you have the responsibility to open our minds and stimulate us to think differently, because our ideas and inventions are going to shape the future. I am one of the few people fortunate enough to step outside of the traditional education system. I am one of the few people fortunate enough to be happy in my education. I am one of the few people fortunate enough to have ownership over my own learning and therefore ownership over my own future. I want to inspire you to take this information and find what makes you happy in your education. I have found my happiness. Now it's your turn. Thank you.